Still there.
Okay. So there's no polls today. We have a PowerPoint for just Masuma Mami. Is that correct? So just remember to keep yourselves on mute. Is everyone ready to go?
Yes.
Ready.
Let's hold it 1 second. Let me just shift that. Okay, I'm happy to push you guys live.
Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this Hujjat seminar entitled Preparing for Ramadan. This is part 2. Thank you to those who joined last week. We hope that you enjoyed the session. We're really excited about this evening session because this is about focusing on getting the most out of Mahe Ramadan, despite the fact that we're in lockdown. As always, I'm joined by our resident alim, Sheikh Jafar Ladek, and our resident alima, Dr. Masuma Jafar, to give their insights to us. We will start first with a recitation from the Holy Qur'an by Yusuf Tharu. Please welcome him with a salawat in your homes, ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
I am reciting verses 183 to 186 of Surah Baqarah, which is the second surah of the Holy Qur'an. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداعي إذا دعان فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. I begin in the name of Allah, the most kind, the most merciful. O you who have faith, prescribed for you is fasting as it was prescribed for those who were before you, so that for known days. But should any of you be sick or on a journey, let it be a similar number of other days. Those who find it straining shall be liable to atonement by feeding a needy person. Should anyone do good of his own accord, that is better for him, and to fast is better for you, should you know. The month of Ramadan is one in which the Qur'an was sent down as guidance to mankind with manifest proofs of guidance and criterion. So let those of you who witness it fast in it. And as for someone who is sick or on a journey, let it be a similar number of other days. Allah desires ease for you, and He does not desire hardship for you, and so that you may complete the number and magnify Allah for guiding you, and that you may give thanks. When my servants ask you about me, tell them that I am indeed nearmost. I answer the supplicant's call when he calls me, so let them respond to me and let them have faith in me so that they may fare rightly. Surely Allah the Most High has spoken the truth. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Thank you. So, as I said earlier, we are looking at preparing for Mahe Ramadhan in lockdown. We will first be hearing from our resident alim, Sheikh Jafar Ladek. He will be talking to the title, Ramadan This Year, How Everything is So Different whilst being exactly the same. Please can I ask you to welcome him with a salawat in your homes, ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلي يا ربي على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter number 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 214, a verse that in many ways speaks volumes to the circumstances in which we are undergoing. He says the following, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Do you think that you will gain entrance to paradise whilst such a trial has not yet come to you as it came to those who passed on before you? مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. They were touched by poverty and hardship and were shaken until even their messenger and those who believed with him said, when will the help of Allah come? In response, Allah states, Ala inna nasrallahi qareeb. Unquestionably, the help of Allah is close. Amanna billah, sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. For all of us, I think the discussion that is on the tips of our tongues is how different this Shahr Ramadan is going to be. And as the title suggests, from one perspective, it is entirely different, yet from another perspective, it is exactly the same. In terms of it being different, it is obvious that the culture of us being able to come to the mosque, the beautiful culture of us being able to share our iftar and our suhoor with our family and friends, that's going to be unavailable to us unless, of course, Oxford University can come up with something this Thursday when they are having their trials to find a vaccine for COVID-19. Allah make it quick, inshallah. But if it doesn't happen and we are still waiting, then of course our ability to come to the mosque and share in that communal experience and gain motivation from one another by sitting in each other's presence, participating in the Qur'an Khani, participating in the dua, participating, for example, even in the a'mal of Layali al-Qadr, all of that is going to be unavailable in terms of sitting together as a larger community, which we are used to. But from another perspective, nothing has changed. Everything is exactly the same. The fast is going to be there. The debate on which day the moon is going to be sighted is going to be there. We will have the same memes going out about the moon sighting and the same arguments and debates about it. That won't change. The fact that we will have the nights of Qadr, inshallah, will not change. Allah grant us the life to be able to reach that. The fact that we will wish to be able to recite as much of the Qur'an, to ponder upon the Qur'an, to be able to maximize the time in which we are given in this month, it is all going to be the same. Fundamentally, nothing has changed. All of the acts of ibadat are available to us in some shape or form, if not exactly the same. So here comes the conundrum. What are we worrying about? Well, of course, all of us as human beings do prefer this consistency, and all of us do take motivation from each other. What is interesting, of course, is that all of us, when we when we take motivation comes from different sources. There are those who very much need an external source to be able to motivate them, or indeed to be able to discipline them. And then there are others who have that internal motivation and that internal discipline themselves. Imagine now if I sat down with 10 people and I asked them, study for your exams, there will be some that will need an external source of motivation. They will say, I need to be sitting in a library because the environment is going to be conducive to my bettering my study. Others will say, I need to have something on in the background or put some headphones on in order to be able to concentrate on what I'm doing. And there are others who will just get on with it and not need anything else. They have the internal motivation. All of us are very different in how we become motivated. One of the reflections that we've been having is that in this period during COVID-19 and the social distancing that we are forced to do, when Shahr Ramadan comes, because Shahr Ramadan is Shahrul Ummah, it is the month of the Ummah, where the Ummah is supposed to collectively worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way. It is supposed to come together. All of these things are being taken from us, the things that we are used to, and the things that motivate us in Shahr Ramadan. For some people, then this will be more difficult. It's like me saying this in this way. There are some people who will recite Dua Kumail every Thursday night if they come to the mosque. But if they don't come to the mosque, and if they're sitting at home, how many of them will recite the Dua Kumail that is available for them? How many will recite the Dua Nudba if they were there at Jum'ah time and it is being played and they will read it on the screen? But for a person to stop, or for a person to build their morning around Dua Nudba, for example, on a Friday morning, some people may not have yet that motivation or that discipline to be able to do so. This gives us an insight into the challenge that we're going to face in Shahr Ramadan. That for many of us, this difference in the way in which Shahr Ramadan is going to be for us will have an impact as to the extent of our motivation, the extent of our determination, the extent of the discipline that we have within ourselves. And so we need to be able to take stock of what it's going to be like in advance for us being in the period of Shahr Ramadan, whilst we are confined to our homes, and we don't have the motivation of each other, we don't have the motivation of a congregation, we don't have the motivation of the Husayniyah to be able to go to. Now, of course, from one perspective, there are going to be brilliant programs available to you throughout the afternoon, evening, and night, every night. Not just, of course, from the wonderful people at Hujjat Stanmore, but you will have access to a plethora of programs from across the world with 24 hours of time zone to be able to fill your day. However, of course, Shahr Ramadan is not just about fulfilling the day or just filling the day and letting time pass. Right now, it is easier for people to find time to just pass them by. And in fact, a lot of the dialogue in the outside world has been, look, just binge watch your favorite TV series. Watch things back to back. I remember actually one comedian, he said this a couple of days ago, he said, I think we should just change the day. Instead of it being 24 hours long, it should be 14 hours long. We should have 7 hours to sleep, 7 hours to be awake, so that we can quickly get through this. He asked, whoever made this idea of 24 hours in a day anyway? Of course, from a comedic perspective, great, it stands to reason. But actually, if you think about Shahr Ramadan, the purpose of Shahr Ramadan is very unique, isn't it? It's about taking advantage of every moment that we have available to us, to the extent that the goal, of course, is taqwa, and part of taqwa, or the essential elements of taqwa, is to remove yourself from sin, such to the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even rewards the one who is sleeping in Shahr Ramadan, because the person has no potential for sinning at that moment. So even your sleep is rewarded. Every breath is like a tasbih. Every moment of sleep is also considered to be ibadah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we think about this need to be able to center ourselves with motivation. We need to be able to think about how this month is going to be different for us, for example, than the month of Sha'ban that we are ending at the moment. What is it that I want to be able to achieve in the month of Ramadan? And how is it going to be different when we spend such large parts of our day at home? Now, if you think about what normally Shahr Ramadan might be like for the most of us, many of us will go to school, university, work, and so on and so forth, and our day will be filled with different tasks, different duties that we need to try to fulfill. And so when we come home, there is of course less time for us. We are probably a little bit fatigued. We know that we have a little bit of time left before the mosque program starts, and so on and so forth. In this Shahr Ramadan, we expect that it's going to be very different. The majority of us, yes, may be working from home. Many of us may not be working from home. Many of us may have a plethora of time on our hands. The real question is, what are we going to be doing with this time whilst we have all of this available to us? Now, Her Eminence Lady Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, has a beautiful hadith regarding fasting. It has a great degree of insight as to what we want to be able to achieve out of this. She says in the hadith, جَعَلَ اللَّهُ الصِّيَامَ تَثْبِيتًا لِلْإِخْلَاصِ. She states that Allah has made fasting for the maintenance, the affirmation of your sincerity. A person who fasts, the outcome of it should be an increased level of sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That in itself can be a tool of measurement to see whether a person's fast has actually improved them. Now, what's interesting is the Qur'an speaks about how, or it at least gives us some inclination about some of the ways in which we can increase the betterment of our fast. We can think about this in terms of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Rahman, chapter number 55 of the Qur'an, verse number 60, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. Is the reward for good anything other than good? Anything but good? هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ. The jaza of doing good cannot be anything other than ihsan. Now what this means is not just this, this bag of coins that we're collecting of thawab for the akhirah. No, it actually means that when we do good, the reward of it should be more goodness. You should actually see that even more comes from you. In terms of Shahr Ramadan, we want to be able to see that as well. We want to be able to see that if the goal of the fast is to be able to not just fast the stomach, we also want to know that the fast is fasting the tongue, it is fasting of the eyes, it is fasting of the ears, it is fasting of any body part that may usually have its proclivities. It usually may go towards some sort of sin or some sort of even makruh, some sort of kiraha. Then actually we need to think about how the goal of the fast is now going to be in the realms of our own houses and not in terms of how we normally imagined it is going to be when we go to our normal places of work or school or university and so on and so forth. If I go to school, if I go to work, it may be that I've already thought about it in advance that my fast is going to be tested in certain ways. I don't know, you get around the water cooler and people are chit-chatting and they're talking whatever they want to talk about, and you're thinking, this is a fast, my ears want to be better than this, my eyes want to be better than this, so on and so forth. Now when you're in your own homes here, and we are being told so often, pass your time, binge watch TV, just find a way to be able to pass the time, so that we can get over this and 3 months will pass as quickly as possible. Shahr Ramadan is telling us the opposite. It is telling us, fast in such a way that your sincerity increases. Fast in such a way that goodness espouses goodness. Goodness breeds goodness. Goodness yields goodness. And so actually we need to think about, in terms of the new environment that we're going to be facing, we need to do this at our own individual levels, what that means for us in terms of preparing ourselves for the location that we are now fasting in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in another verse, chapter number 3, Surah Al-Imran, verse number 200. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who believe. So this is really addressing you and I very specifically. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Isbiru wa sabiru wa rabitu wattaqullah la'allakum tuflihun. Persevere and endure and remain stationed. Fear Allah, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, so that you may be successful. As you know, the Qur'an, when it has such a verse, it has an order to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us what to do first, and then second, then third, and then fourth. So have a look at this verse once more. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. O you who believe. Isbiru. Be patient. Wasabiru. And endure in your patience. It means even go further, excel in your patience. Warabitu. Remain stationed. Wattaqullah. And have taqwa of Allah. La'allakum tuflihun. So that you may become successful. I think if we reflect on these particular verses, we will have a good understanding as to how to relate it to our own circumstances and challenges that we are going to face in terms of the new environment of our time in Shahr Ramadan that is going to be before us. We started the verse, chapter 2, verse 214. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something mind-boggling to us. It's a real challenge to the intellect. It's a challenge to the soul. It asks, you've heard all these stories about these great individuals and you laud them. You say, MashaAllah, how brilliant these people were. They had to endure these challenges and they had to be able to demonstrate and prove to themselves that they could overcome the challenges and maximize their own selves during these challenges. Do you think that you will not be tested like they were tested? Do you not think that they earned paradise, and so you will not be asked to also earn your paradise? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Do you think that you will enter paradise while such a trial has not yet come to you, as has not come to those before you? مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ. They were touched with poverty and hardship, to the extent of what? وَزُلْزِلُوا. And they were shaken, حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ. Until even the messenger said, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ. And those who were with him, they also said, مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ. They turned their affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. Unquestionably, the help of Allah is close. I don't know whether that means the hand sanitizer is close, or whether that means the vaccine is close, or the schools are close to reopening. You will probably know better than I. But what's important is that we take a few minutes to take stock of what it means to have the challenge ahead of us, and how we're going to maximize the fast in accordance with the challenges that are in front of us, our new environments that we're going to be spending time in during our fast. And that means thinking and having a plan that you want to be able to achieve maybe 3 things during Shahr Ramadan. If you note them, if you think through how you're going to achieve them, if you lay them out over the course of 30 days as to where you want to be after the first 5, the first 10, the first 20, and so on and so forth, you will find that it's very, very useful, so that we're not only relying on an external motivation of the community coming together, but rather the internal motivation comes out. As Her Eminence Fatima alayhi salam said, جَعَلَ اللَّهُ الصِّيَامَ تَثْبِيتًا لِلْإِخْلَاصِ. Allah has rendered fasting for the maintenance, the affirmation of your sincerity. Let us hope that the fast becomes that for you and I, inshallah, and that we pray that all of us are kept healthy and safe, and that we will have the very best Shahr Ramadan we have ever had, and we will come back together, inshallah, even stronger as a community than what we were in the previous weeks. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.
Thank you, Sheikh. As you will all be familiar by now, you are able to join the conversation, ask questions for our speakers to respond to by going to slido.com and using the event code Hujjat. Please do ask any questions that you may have. We will then be able to deal with all of those after we have heard from Dr. Masuma Jafar. If I can ask her to now present to us. She's going to be speaking this evening on the topic getting into the right mindset for Mahe Ramadhan. So please welcome her with a salawat again in your homes, ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى عترة الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وجل أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So I think everything that the Sheikh said will follow on. I'll follow on really well with what he said, because I'm talking about getting into the right mindset for my Ramadan. And if we can get the right mindset, then inshallah we will get the ikhlas and the taqwa that is available in this month, inshallah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the verses that Yusuf recited, which specifically talk about fasting and my Ramadan, and just take a little bit out from that to try to sort of make us sort of look at my Ramadan in a very positive way, inshallah. So looking at the first verse, which is in Surah Baqarah, verse number 183, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam, kama kutiba ala ladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. I want us to look at this, and I'm sure you've all heard this, but I think it's a really good reminder in how Allah knows our psyche so well that if you look at it and compare it to a nurse giving an injection to a small child. Now, when the nurse is about to give this injection to the child is very, very frightened, and he knows that something's going to come up which he's not looking forward to. In the same way, when my Ramadan is mentioned to us, where the first thing that comes into our mind is fasting. Oh my God, it's like it's something that we're sort of very apprehensive about, and especially in the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment, because we no longer have that sort of community feel. We no longer have the 2 hours beforehand, which is probably the toughest 2 hours before the iftar, which really goes really fast when you're at mosque, but when you're at home, it might not go as fast, and we're sort of stressing about it. So the nurse, knowing that the child is stressing about it, will sort of calm the child down by telling the child, you're really, really great. You're an amazing child. You're really good. And, sort of up him up a little bit. So he's got something to live up to, sort of thing. And Allah again starts off, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. Oh, you who believe. You're not just ordinary people. You're the believers. You can handle this. And then the nurse will sort of introduce the injection. Again, Allah tells us, Kutiba alaykumus siyam. Fasting has been prescribed for you. So he's introducing the fasting to us. And immediately when he introduces it to us, just as the child will back away and think, oh my God, this is going to, I'm really not looking forward to this, and it's going to hurt. We're thinking the same sort of thing. So what does the nurse do? She tries to calm the child down and say, you know what, it's fine, don't worry. Can you see your brother and your sister before you? They had the injection and look, they're fine. Nothing happened. They're okay. Again, Allah tells us the same thing. Kutiba ala ladina min qablikum. Just like it was prescribed to those before you. They fasted as well and they were fine. Don't stress about it. It's okay. So the child's sort of a little bit calmer now. Now the nurse explains to the child why he needs to go through this hardship. So that you can, if you're vaccinated, you can go on holiday and not get ill, and you can actually enjoy the holiday. La'allakum tattaqun. So inshallah, hopefully, if we do it correctly, then we can get taqwa. And what an amazing thing to receive. It's worth going through any sort of hardship to be able to receive this taqwa if we're able to. So looking at what there is available to us through the fasting, okay? Now, a lot of us are constantly told that the purpose behind the fasting is to get taqwa. And we're like, yeah, okay, you know, we're going to try to get taqwa. And remember, taqwa is mentioned about over 200 times in the Holy Qur'an. But in order to motivate us towards fulfilling any action, we need to truly believe that the benefits of gaining the purpose behind that action is greater than the effort that we need to put into fulfilling that action. So I need to believe that it's worth me putting in going through the hardship of fasting in order to get the taqwa. The taqwa must have that much benefit to me. So I'm just going to look at, as I said, it's been mentioned over 200 times. I'm just going to look at Surah Talaq because it's been mentioned one after the other at the beginning of Surah Talaq with one verse in between, where Allah gives us 3 different benefits of gaining taqwa. So, okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Talaq in verse number 2. Okay, and all these verses start off with وَمَنْ يَتَقِ اللَّهِ, and whoever has taqwa of Allah. What are the benefits? Okay, so the first one is يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, so that He will make for him an outlet. Again, what are we looking for in this COVID situation? We're looking for an outlet. We're looking for a way out. We're looking for some sort of, be it vaccination, be it out of this lockdown, whatever it is, we're looking for some sort of way out. Allah says, gain taqwa and I'll give you an outlet. And then the next verse talks about tawakkulullah, having that trust in Allah. And Allah says, if we have trust in Him, then He will suffice for us. And then the next verse again starts off, tells us about taqwa again. And the next benefit Allah mentions is yaj'allahu min amrihi yusra. He will make easy for him his affair. Now again, what affair do we want to be made easy? The fasting, the lockdown, financial, emotional, the fact that I have no time to myself because I am surrounded by my family all the time. What is it that I want to be made easy to me? Whatever it is, whatever of my affairs that I want to be made easy, all I have to do is get taqwa. And then the next verse, Allah says, يُكَفِّرْ عَنْهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِ وَيُؤْذِمْ لَهُ أَجْرًا. He will remove from him his evil and give him a big reward. Again, this is the month of maghfirah. This is the month of forgiveness. This is what we want out of Mahe Ramadhan, to be forgiven for all our evil, for all our sins, and to be given a great reward. So even if we just look at these 3, and remember again, taqwa has been mentioned so many times in the Holy Qur'an, but if we can truly believe that the benefit of gaining the taqwa is so worth whatever hardship we feel we will get in Mahe Ramadhan, then we will actually want to go through Mahe Ramadhan and go through the fasting. So now looking at the next slide, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, now that He's introduced fasting to us, now that He's made us a little bit more comfortable about the fasting, now that He's told us what is the purpose behind the fasting, now He mentions Shahr Ramadan. Now He mentions the month of Ramadan. He didn't mention it before because, again, He knew that if He mentioned it before, our mind would go straight into the fasting. But now, because we've sort of calmed down a little bit about the fasting, we can actually see what Shahr Ramadan is about. And I'm not going to go into this whole verse. I'm just going to look at the highlighted bits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us here, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Qur'an. The month of Ramadan is that in which the Qur'an was revealed. Notice He doesn't say in which He revealed the Qur'an. He's actually making the emphasis on the Qur'an. It's the month in which the Qur'an was revealed. So the emphasis is on the Qur'an, and I think we need to keep that in mind when we're looking at one of the action points. Sheikh talked about having 3 action points. Maybe one of them needs to revolve around the Holy Qur'an. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us further on in this verse, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْأُسْرَ. Allah desires ease for you, and He does not desire for you difficulty. I think this is really, really important, the way He said it. It's like me saying, I want the food that I've cooked to taste delicious. I don't want it to taste horrible. Now, the fact that I want it to taste delicious makes it obvious that I don't want it to taste horrible. But the fact that I'm emphasizing I don't want it to taste horrible is showing that, you know what, I really want it to taste delicious. Again, Allah's telling you, He desires ease for us. He does not desire difficulty. With Shahr Ramadan, which is all about the fasting, He's telling us that He doesn't want to put us in difficulty. He wants this to be easy for us. What is it that He's desiring? What ease is He desiring for us? Again, if we recognize the benefits of the fasting, then the fasting itself will be eased. It will, you know, with that mindset that I know I'm going to go through this, but what I'm going to get at the end of it is going to be so worth it. For those women who are listening, maybe I can give the example of going through childbirth. Yes, you know it's going to be difficult. There's no doubt it's going to be really, really difficult. But your goal, your aim, your sight is at what you're going to get at the end of it. And therefore, it makes it worth going through all of that. I'm not saying fasting is as difficult as that, nowhere near as difficult as that. But what I'm saying is, if we can keep our eye on the aim and the goal, then the fasting itself doesn't seem to be as traumatic as we're making it out. Now here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of this verse says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. Remember the verse when He talked about fasting? He said, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that, hopefully, inshallah, if we do it correctly, we'll get taqwa. Here He's saying, so that if it's done correctly, if everything's adhered to, then what is available for us to get is for us to be able to give thanks, for us to be able to do shukr. Okay? So again, when He's talking about the fasting, He's saying that what is available is taqwa. When He's talking about Shahr Ramadan, He's saying once you've gone through the whole month and you've done the whole month, what is available is for us to be able to give thanks. Now, I can only give thanks if I actually get something from it. If I don't get anything from it, what am I giving thanks for? Okay, so if I haven't got the taqwa, what am I giving thanks for? If there has been no growth in me, what am I giving thanks for? If it has just been about me getting through the month, is that enough for me to give thanks for? That, oh my God, okay, I survived the 1 month, thank God, it's over until next year. I have to decide what is it that I'm giving thanks for. It's really, really important for me to recognize that that's what Allah is telling us. And then the next verse talks about, and this is really beautiful, where Allah talks about this conversation that we should have with Him. And Yusuf recited this really well, but I just want to correct the translation slightly, because I feel like it's usually translated as Yusuf translated it, but I don't think that's quite correct. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذا سألك عبادي أني فإني قريب. And when my servants ask you concerning me, then indeed or surely I am very near. It doesn't say tell them I am very near. It's usually translated, and Yusuf translated it as this: when my servants ask you about me, tell them I am very near. The tell them is not there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, and when my servants ask you concerning me, He's talking to the Holy Prophet, and He's telling the Holy Prophet, when my servants ask you about me, He is so close to us that He doesn't tell the Holy Prophet to tell us. He tells us directly, indeed, I am very, very near you. He actually takes the Holy Prophet out of the equation to show us how close he is to us. It is such a beautiful verse, and it's so lost in translation. So it's again recognizing that God is so close to me. And then the verse continues about, that when they ask me, when they pray for me, tell them that, I answer their prayer. And all He wants from us is to believe in Him and to walk in the right way. I think I'm not going to go into this verse in more detail because I feel like I'm running out of time. But I encourage all of you to look at this verse in more detail because it's such a beautiful verse. It's so full of hope. It really, really builds our relationship with Allah. So again, the action point from this verse, I would say, would be to have a conversation with Allah. And when I'm talking about having a conversation with Allah, it's actually talking to Him outside of the salah. The salah is something that we have to do. We don't have a choice in that. Du'as are something that we feel we must do. But a conversation is when I love the person so much that I just want to spend time talking to them. I need the person in my life. Allah should be the entity that I turn to when something amazing happens in my life. He is the one I want to tell before I tell anyone else. When something horrible happens in my life, he is the one I want to tell before I tell anyone else. And in that way, my relationship with him becomes stronger and stronger. He is the one I rely on. And then if I turn to others, because I feel like I need to talk it through with anyone else, or I need to share the information with anyone else, then they are tools that Allah has sent to me. They are never on their own. They are never the person that I rely on, but they are there through Allah. And that's huge, because then I never feel alone. So I encourage all of you to look at this verse. It's amazing. Okay, so looking at the COVID-19 situation and how it actually will help my spiritual upliftment. A lot of us have been talking about how scared we are and how awful my Ramadan is going to be, and what are we going to do without going to mosque, and we're going to have to cook every single day, and how are we going to pass our time, especially, as I said, the last couple of hours. And I just want us to look at the positives. Now, in any situation that you find yourself in, there is always the negatives and always the positives. It is our choice what we look at. And I mean any situation at all. Okay? With this COVID-19 situation, obviously there are lots and lots and lots of negatives, and I'm not belittling them at all. I know there are people who've gone through a lot. There are people who've lost loved ones. There are people who are, very, very ill. People who are alone. So I'm not belittling that there are lots and lots of negatives, but what I'm saying is there are lots of positives as well. And if we focus on the positives, that's where growth will happen. So for growth to happen, we need to come out of our comfort zone. Growth never happens when we're just in our comfort zone. Okay. Now, whenever we come out of our comfort zone, we feel very uncomfortable. We get these withdrawal symptoms. We want to jump back into our comfort zone. We find it very, very difficult. We find it very difficult to function immediately when we're out of our comfort zone. It takes us a while to settle into the new zone that we're in. And again, look at how beautifully Allah has timed this. There is no randomness in His universe. The fact that He did the lockdown and everything happened a few weeks before the blessed month of Mahe Ramadhan. It gave us time to actually get used to this lockdown, this social distancing, this whole concept of what we're going through at the moment, so that we're actually now, as we're coming into Mahe Ramadhan, it's still there and we're still a little bit uncomfortable about it, but we are a little bit used to it so that we can actually feel like we can now cope to a certain extent. In the same way, if you look at the way that the month is divided into three, okay? Allah says at the beginning of the month, there is barakah involved, available for us, okay? And then rahmah, and then maghfirah. Now look at the three. Barakah is something that, barakah is blessing that is settled, that is come down and it's settled on the earth and it's there for our picking, okay? Rahmah is mercy, which is needed. It's something that I need and Allah gives me. Maghfirah is forgiveness. Now at each stage, my awareness needs to be a little bit higher. So at the beginning, when barakah is there, my awareness may not be there, and I'm still trying to get used to the fasting. I'm still trying to cope with coming out of my comfort zone of being able to eat when I want, have my tea, have my coffee and everything. So the barakah is there, it's all around me, and it's available, and it's easy for me to get hold of. Okay. Then as I get used to it and the withdrawal symptoms sort of come out, I come out of the withdrawal symptom a little bit, then rahmah is there, which takes a little bit more effort. And then when I am finding my body is totally used to the fasting now, and I'm in the zone, then maghfirah is there, forgiveness is there. In fact, you know your body is so used to the fasting, because on the day of Eid, how do most of us feel? We feel so bloated, and so our body can't cope with eating because it's not used to it. So again, we have to go back to that, the normal way of eating that we used to. So our bodies adapt very quickly. Okay. Then the next positive that comes out of it is that we're taken out of our rat race of life. Okay. Again, look at a ship. Okay, the ship sails on the river, on the sea, but in order to fix the ship, it has to come out. We have to take it out of the water in order to fix it. In the same way, for us to be fixed, we need to come out of the rat race of life to be able to be fixed. For us to actually take time out to self-reflect. A lot of us, whenever we're told, we should be concentrating on this, we should be doing this, we should be doing that, I don't have time in my life. I really don't have time in my life. God's given us time. Even if you're working from home, you're not commuting. So you've been given a little bit more time, okay? Now is the time to reflect on, was that the reason that I wasn't getting close to Allah and moving on my spiritual path, or was that an excuse? And only I can answer that. And then the next three are talking about the program. Now, when we were at mosque, okay, we had no control over the program. We had to just go with it. And if we chose not to go with it, then we stayed at home and had our own program, but we would feel guilty about not going to the mosque. Here we have 3 different ways of getting the maximum out of the program. So I can have my own individual program for my Ramadan. I have my close family program, and I have an online program with any community that I choose to connect to and do the amals and do the program with. So I can actually then decide which one works for me and get the maximum out of all 3. And then obviously the normal positives of my Ramadan will still be there. They don't go away. Like Sheikh said, they're still there. So you have the blessed month full of barakah, rahmah and maghfirah. You have the concentration that's on your soul. You have the connection to Allah and the Holy Qur'an. And shaitan is locked up. So you have not only the positives of the month that is normally there, but we have a lot more positives. And finally, to finish off with practical steps, here I want to look at a hadith from Imam Rida alayhi salam, where he talks about my Ramadan and the things that we should be looking at. So he says that it's a month where you should ask for forgiveness. And he also says, don't allow my Ramadan to come while someone's rights are on you. And he says, don't enter my Ramadan while you have hatred towards another mu'min. This is really, really important, because obviously to ask for forgiveness, I need to be able to self-reflect and ask and figure out what it is that I'm asking for forgiveness for. For me to make sure that I do not come into the month without taking anyone's right. Again, I need to reflect on which right have I taken off another person and ask for their forgiveness. And finally, he says we shouldn't enter the month with hatred towards another mu'min. I think one of the most positives of the COVID-19 situation is that it has made me appreciate my family, my extended family, my community, mankind itself. Just that social distancing has made me realize how much of a social creation I am, and the fact that I need other people, and how blessed I am that I have other people in my life. Also, as I said, it's important that I have an individual program for myself with the Holy Qur'an, thinking about how I will actually live these verses. Again, it's not a book just for recitation. Of course, there is a lot of benefit in reciting the Holy Quran, but it's about thinking about how I can actually make it a book of guidance for myself. And finally, I think it's important that I look at how I can learn from this my Ramadan, from the lockdown situation, to carry it through. How can I actually move forward so that when my Ramadan is over, the taqwa that I have gained, the shukr that I have gained, how will I then take it forward afterwards, after my Ramadan is over, after lockdown is over? What can I do? And finally, in order to be able to do this, I need to be organized. I need to have some sort of timetable, and I need to have SMART goals. It's important that I write these down. It's important that I self-reflect to figure out what my timetable should be. If I'm not a morning person, then it's okay to have a lie-in and stay up all night. If I'm a morning person, then, that's what I need to do. If I'm finding the 2 hours before iftar really, really difficult, then, I can make sure that I do everything that I need to do beforehand and then just relax in those 2 hours. Again, as Sheikh said, sleep is ibadah as well. Not that we should sleep the whole month away, but there's no harm in sleeping when I need to in order to get the maximum benefit of the holy month. And also, obviously, SMART goals are very, very important. I hope this has been of benefit. I pray to Allah that He gives us the tawfiq to get the maximum out of this Ramadan. I think we are in such an amazing, amazing opportunity has been handed to us to be able to have my Ramadan in in a way that we would never imagine we would have had. It's an amazing opportunity, and inshallah we will grow from that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. So we're now going to look at some questions that have been sent to us. Please do send in any questions you have using slido.com. You can use the event code Hujjat, and the questions that you post will then appear on the screens in a moment. Please remember also, I've had a few questions about this, that the questions that you send are anonymous. You can choose to add your name to them should you wish to, but there's no obligation to do so. So please don't let that stop you from sending questions to us. So let's have a look at some of the questions that we've received already. Perhaps, Dr. Masma, the first question is best directed at you, given what you were talking about. Hopefully we should have the questions on screen in a moment, but until then, let me just read it out to you. It says, can you briefly explain what taqwa or God consciousness is? How do we understand this concept?
Taqwa is, as you said, God consciousness. It's being aware that God is watching us constantly, that God is there. He is closer to me than my jugular vein. He is every thought, every decision, every action is made with Him in mind. It literally is knowing that He is there all the time.
Thank you. Sheikh, perhaps this question is one that, given what you were talking about, is best addressed to you. Can you give us some examples of goals that we can aim for during Ramadan whilst in lockdown?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dr. Masuma mentioned that the Qur'an should be a central goal for us, and absolutely. So it depends on what you're regular in doing, and therefore setting a goal that's just a little bit ahead of that, so that you can make sure that it's not too far ahead, that it doesn't become realistic for you, but is something still that's going to push you enough to be able to make you improve. So it might be something like you want to finish the whole Qur'an in the month of Shahr Ramadan, or you want to be able to recite 2 pages a day, whatever it might be. But the Qur'an should be central to the goals that you are trying to make. It might be that you want to read about the Qur'an, so you want to read a book on the tafsir of the Qur'an, or you want to learn more about the techniques of pondering, and you want to just sit and think more about what the Qur'an says. It might be that you, when you read the Qur'an, you want to look at the Qur'an in light of a particular subject. So you say, I'm reading the Qur'an, but I'm looking at the verses that might stand out to me in terms of familial unit, or in terms of business ethics, whatever it is that you really want to gain insight from. So set a goal that is Qur'an-centric, number one. Number two, another goal that we can set for ourselves is to try to stamp out a particular sin that we are regular in doing or habitual in doing, especially those that we're aware of versus those that we probably need to dig a little bit deeper to be able to think about that we're doing them. Sometimes we do things we don't even realize what we're doing. So that requires a person to take stock of their own selves, and in terms of, as I suggested, you've got a difference between when you're at school or at work, and you know that there are certain things that normally make you weak, or there are certain things that you might rush towards in terms of a sin in that sphere or in that particular social circle. Whereas now you might not be in those same social circles, you may not be in those same familial places. So now you need to think about what are those things that you need to be able to stamp out that will ensure that the fast is a more sublime fast than just an ordinary fast. So again, it requires us to be able to think about the sins that I might do, or the makruhat that I might be more proximate to in the circumstances I find myself in now. So that would be a second target for you and I to try to be able to stamp out. A third target might be, and again, this is all for an individual to think about, but a person wants to be able to develop themselves in the month of Ramadan. So one element is to stop the sin, but there's another element which is about self-development and thinking about where you want to get to. So that might be something which is a skill. It might be something that is going to be in terms of an intellectual pursuit that you want to be able to do. So a third thing that you might want to be able to do is to think about a particular goal in terms of an aspiration that you have over 30 days. There are many ahadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that speak about the importance of consistency, which is far greater and far more beneficial to a person than just doing something a lot at once or doing it very, very sporadically. Person can do their Salat al-Layl once, or once every 3 months. Of course, it's great, but a person may wish to be able to discipline themselves and say, as the nights are becoming shorter and shorter, we will have the ability now to be able to make sure I have more time to do my Salat al-Layl, as an example. A person may say, for the whole month, I just want to do my 1 rak'ah of witr. Person may say, I'm going to do all 11 rak'ah of Salat al-Layl. And this would be a really positive target or aspiration to set for ourselves. Whatever it is that we're already doing, build a little bit more on that, which is realistic for you, and push yourself in that way, inshallah.
Sheikh, thank you. Just on that, perhaps I could also ask you to look at one of the other questions, because it's directly linked to your answer, which is a question that says, Salam, I'm 13. Is it more beneficial for me to read the Qur'an in Arabic or read the English translation?
Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. What a wonderful question. There's benefits to both. The Friday sermon that we gave on Friday just gone, if you wish to be able to check it out, which will be on the Hujjat YouTube page, was entitled, Why Was the Qur'an Revealed in Arabic? And the idea behind this is to understand that the Arabic has certain benefits, certain blessings in it. But of course, what is most important is that you understand what you are reciting and that you take away the meaning, you take away the depth, and you try to practice what you learn from the recitation of the Qur'an. So I wouldn't want to tell you to do one or the other. My humble recommendation would be to find time to do both. Read it in the Arabic so that your recitation becomes stronger. You start to be able to see the words, recognize the words, and start to think about why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used that particular word in the Arabic in that location of that verse. That will help you in your insight. That is as powerful as understanding the translation, because to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used a particular word is the priority. It what comes first before the benefit of the translation. So try to read the Quran a little bit in Arabic, follow it up by reading the same verses in English, so that you can match the two and try to benefit from both of them. What's very important is that you try to get a good translation of the Quran. If you're going to read it in English, try to get a good translation. Sometimes some translations are written in very old English, and it becomes a little bit difficult for us to be able to read. So there are strong translations out there. I would recommend a couple of different ones. For example, the Ali Quli Qara'i translation, if you have that at home. Also, maybe the Shakir translation, if you have that at home. But see which one that makes sense to you. They all have good points, but choosing a good translation is also important when you read the Quran in English.
Thank you, Sheikh. We've had a question that's not strictly speaking to do with mindset, although I think it probably impacts on mindset, which is this. There's a huge difference between the najaf.org and hujjat.org timings for Fajr Salah. Being Muqallid of Ayatollah Sistani, which one it says should is correct. I'm wondering whether or not the person wanted to write which one should we follow rather than necessarily which one is correct. And I'm presuming obviously that people can be impacted by this because they get caught up in the timing. So perhaps on that basis, Dr. Mathema, perhaps if you can give us some thoughts in relation to that.
Thank you. So I think you have to do your research and decide which one you feel has had, you trust, and which one you want to follow. I think you need to be aware that Najaf.org is not Ayatollah Sistani's under Ayatollah Sistani. It is run by his son-in-law, if I'm not mistaken, but it is not something that has his stamp on it and that he says that we should follow this one and this is the correct one. There are some people who will use both Najaf and Hujjat, so whichever one starts the fast earlier, they will go with that one. Whichever one breaks the fast later, they will go with that one. So they will err on the side of caution and make sure that they will look at both and start the fast a little bit earlier and finish later, and that's fine, you can do that. But when I went through this and the research that I did, I was satisfied that the work that was put into the Hujjat timetable was extensively done and has been actually commended by lots of people, including a top someone who'd come here looking at trying to figure out what the timing should be, and he looked at all the different timetables, and he was an expert in the field, and he actually commented on the fact that Hujjat was the closest one that he thought was the correct one, the closest that could be considered as correct. There was a lot of work done in the past to get the Hujjat one. So again, you have to decide yourself. There is, no one can tell you that you have to follow this one. It's a matter of following the one that you feel you can trust.
Thank you. Sheikh, you mentioned in one of the answers to a question, I think it was in relation to goals, looking at perhaps deeds that you might want to eradicate. We seem to have a number of questions that I think have come out of that theme. Perhaps if we can look at two which are interlinked. I'm afraid I can't highlight both at the same time, but I think you can all see them. It says, one of them says, is listening to Islamic themed music allowed? And the other one says, I listen to music when I work and exercise. Is this permissible during fasting? Perhaps you can give us your thoughts on that.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. There's two questions. One, listening to Islamic music, correct? And during fasting. And the second one?
Yes, and the second one is, I listen to music when I work and exercise. Is this permissible during fasting?
Ahsan, okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Hussein Sistani, may Allah grant him a long life, he is asked about this. Is it permissible to listen to religious songs in praise of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam accompanied by music? And he answers and he says, songs, al-ghina, are haram, absolutely. However, singing praise of the Prophet or Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that is sung with a good tune, but is not ghina, it is not music form, which not a musical form, is without problem. As for the music, it would be allowed if it is not suitable for entertainment and amusement gatherings. So here we can see a differentiation between a type of music that is considered to be for entertainment, anything low, anything lewd, and anything for amusement gatherings, versus a type of music that is that does not fall in that category. It is not for the purpose of low or lewd entertainment. It's not for the purpose of just amusement gatherings. If it falls within that second category, if it's not for lewd or low entertainment, not for amusement gatherings, and it is something which is going to be quote-unquote Islamic, then according to His Eminence Sayyid Sistani, this is permissible for you to be able to listen to. Again, the second question would revert back to the first. If you are exercising and you are listening to something, If it is for motivational purposes, then again, it's as long as it is falling within the boundaries of what is permissible, then this is permissible for you to be able to listen to whilst you are exercising. If it's something, a type of music that is going to be of any lewdness, the entertainer, the author of it, the singer of it is something that is lewd, something that is going to be of an ill repute person, in any shape or form that it has some negativity in it, then according to His Eminence Ayatollah Sistani, this would not be permissible for you to be able to listen to. And of course, when I say negativity, we mean things like the swearing in it, things like the video, things like the language that's used in it, or the insinuations that are used in it, and so on and so forth. And I think a person who places a moral mirror up against that song, they will immediately know whether this falls into that type of music which is considered for entertainment, and that type of music which is considered for amusement gatherings. If it falls into those two, then it would not be permissible for you to be listening to.
Thank you. Dr. Nasma, perhaps I could ask you to look at the next question. It says, with the kids at home all day, a blessing, but I feel I struggle with spirituality as have no time or am too tired at the end of the day to connect with God. Any advice?
I think, again, it's really important to recognize that connecting to Allah, ibadah is not just what we do on the musalla. It's not reciting the Holy Qur'an and reciting du'as and doing amals. It is worshipping Him if we do whatever we're doing, if we're doing it with the correct niyyah. And obviously doing it with the correct niyyah is to do it solely for His pleasure and in the way He tells us to do it. So looking after my children is an opportunity that Allah has given me, where I have been given another human being to influence another human being, to bring up another human being who could then be the Ansar of the Mahdi, inshallah. It's a huge opportunity given to me, and if I am spending time with my children and I'm doing it with the correct niyyah, then what better ibadah than that? So instead of sitting there beating myself up about not doing other mustahabats, let's look at this as a huge mustahabat in spending the maximum amount of my time with my children to actually influence them, to bring about the right mindset, to bring them up in a way that they truly will be the Ansar of the Mahdi when he comes, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you for that. Sheikh, the next question. There is a lot of Ramadan content from our Sunni brothers looking at tafsirs of the Qur'an. Would you recommend staying away for the sake of misinterpretation?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Qur'an that we are obligated to understand what verses are known as muhkam and what verses are mutashabih. So as an example, in chapter number 3, verse number 7 of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there are these two categories of verses. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن الكتاب. Allah has sent down the Quran to you. In it there are verses which are clear, and they are the foundation of the book. وَأُخَرُ مُتَشَابِهَاتٍ. And there are others which are allegorical. They could have multiple different meanings to them. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ. As for he in his heart who there is a deviation from the truth, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ. If there's a deviation in his heart, he wants to follow the mutashabihat verses. He follows the verses that could have multiple ambiguous meanings that could lead him astray. So what's important for us is always to first have a firm foundation of our faith, to understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about these verses, what their meanings are, what they indicate towards, and so on and so forth. Once we have a strong grounding in understanding the Qur'an, then we are in a better position to be able to listen to interpretations and explanations from any other source, any other challenge that comes to us, once we are grounded, firmly grounded in our own understanding of these verses. I highly encourage everyone to be able to listen to tafsir from any proper scholar, and even to be able to understand works of non-Islamic texts from others, from outside the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. This is important for us in terms of our growth. This is important in terms of challenging our own selves, and without that we will not be able to push past where we are as individuals or as a community. However, what's very important is to have grounding, to make sure that it doesn't lead us astray, or that if questions come up or challenges come up, we know we have resources where to turn to that will allow us to be able to return back to what is correct, what is most firm in our understanding. So I don't want to say things like our Sunni brethren are going to lead us astray, or things like that. All knowledge, proper knowledge, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that is true and truthful is also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whichever source we get that from, that is a blessing for us, but that doesn't mean that we don't take precautions in how we get to those multiple sources and how we filter those particular sources. So again, number one, make sure that you are grounded in your own understanding. Number two, make sure that you follow scholars. If you're going to read and research through other ideas, make sure it's scholarly opinions and not just things that are of waham and imagination and pointless things. And then inshallah, go back and check your resources that will allow you to get even further in your understanding of the Qur'an.
Thank you. Some good advice there. Dr. Masma, there's a question that was directly addressed at you. Perhaps if I can put that one to you. Someone clearly wanted to hear what else you had to say about verse 186 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Perhaps you can just give us a flavour of what else you wanted to cover before you thought you had run out of time.
Okay, it will just be a flavour, because I think, as Sheikh will tell you, it's a verse that you can actually do a whole series of lectures, not only just one lecture on. It's an absolutely beautiful verse, and I think with any verse in the Holy Quran, again, the self-reflection is so important. If I sit there and reflect on the words that Allah says, and as Sheikh said, the words that Allah uses are so specific, and the translation, to join the translation with the words, will actually help you to sort of realize where the translation just does not do the justice to the Arabic. So even if you don't know Arabic, you get a taste of how the translation just isn't enough. And obviously the words in Arabic are the words of Allah, so just reciting them has a huge effect on your soul. But very, very quickly, looking at this verse, it starts off with what is and when. It doesn't say if, it says when my servant asks you concerning me. So Allah is actually saying there will come a time when every servant will ask concerning him. It's not if, it's like, if my child has gone to war, I'm not going to sit there and say if he comes back. I'm going to say when he comes back. It's that, it's like literally Allah's waiting for us to ask about him, that he's put that innately in us. And he's just waiting for that innateness to come out and for us to ask about him. And when we do ask about him, he's so, and I'm putting human emotions on God, because that's the only way we can actually understand it. But obviously God is above human emotions, but he's so excited and so happy that we've asked about him that he sort of like tells, moves the prophet aside and says, I'm here, I'm right here. I'm right next to you. So it's like when we ask concerning him, or ask the Holy Prophet concerning Allah, Allah literally says, I'm very, very near. And then he goes on to say that he answers the prayer, and the prayer, da'wata, is a singular. So even if I've only turned to him once, it's not that I do dua all the time, it's not that I'm constantly praying to him, I just ask for a specific prayer. And Allah says, when my servant asks for that specific prayer, that servant, whenever he calls me. So again, although I'm going to the Creator, I don't have to have a specific appointment. I don't have to sit there and wait for months and wait for the COVID situation to be aware, or wait for my turn to come. It's like whenever I feel the need to, whenever I feel the enthusiasm, whenever I feel like I have nobody, whenever I feel anxious, whenever I feel I feel it, I turn to him. Whatever I ask for, he says, he's there. He's there, and he answers. And all he asks in return is that I should try. He's not even saying you have to do it. He says, try to answer my call. Again, the reflection would be, what does that mean, to answer his call? And then he says, and believe in me. Why? لَعَلَّهُمْ, so that they may, should they do? يَرْشُدُونَ, walk in the right way, walk in the right path, walk towards our potential, towards our perfection, towards paradise. That's what Allah's created us for. That's what He's leading us to. It's not because He needs us, it's because we need Him. That is a really, really superficial sort of looking at that verse. But again, there's so much depth in it if we reflect on it. Just very, very quickly, I keep talking about reflection and people keep asking, yes, but how? So this Mahe Ramadhan, the whole month, all my talks are on how to actually do self-reflection. So inshallah, tune in.
Inshallah. Thank you. Sheikh, we've had a question that seems to have been liked a number of times, or at least it has on the version that I can see. And it is this. It says, I want to stay up the whole night and study, do ibadah, play games, etc., and then sleep the whole day except waking up for prayer. Is this permissible?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Is this permissible? Yes, it's permissible for you to stay up the whole night and make sure that you fulfill the fiqhi requirements of your fast and the salah and so on and so forth. The question is not whether something is permissible. As you heard from Dr. Masuma's brilliant presentation, she focused so much on the meaning of taqwa and the meaning of growth. And I think what we all need to ask ourselves is that if we want to do the absolute minimal, and if we want to be as relaxed as possible in this month, whether that would help achieve for us to gain growth as individuals or even as a family unit, as a collective. So I would humbly respond back to my friend, whoever's asked that question, and I would say to them, if you want to be able to enjoy your downtime, such as playing your games and so on and so forth, I encourage this for you to also take a break. But what else are you going to do outside of that that's going to match in terms of the growth that you want to be able to achieve in this month? So I'm actually asking it to you. It's not a rhetorical question. Feel free to reply back and we can have a nice little dialogue. I'm sure people would love to hear this back and forth a little bit. Let's think about what more we can do in this month of Ramadan. If you were to task yourself with 3 things, what would those 3 things be? Why those 3 things? And how would you go about achieving them?
I will wait to see whether we get the requested responses. In the meantime, and Dr. Masma, the next question says, I offer qadha at the time of Nawafil Salah, so will I also get Nawafil Thawab, or is it better to pray the Farz Salah ASAP and later offer the qadha?
So because if you have qadha on you, obviously it is better to pray the qadha than to offer mustahab salat like the nawafil. But at the same time, to offer the qadha at the nawafil time, what you're actually saying to Allah is that I want to offer the nafilah, but I have qadha on me, which is a debt on me that I owe you, so I am praying the qadha instead of the nafilah, which I would want to do. You can pray the nafilah and then pray the qadha at a separate time. It's not like fasting where you can't keep a mustahab fast if you have a qadha fast on you. With salah, you can do mustahab salah even if you have qadha on you, but it is better to give the qadha first. And obviously we know that God is the most merciful, and God looks at our intention and what our niyyah is rather than the actual action or the results of the action. So if I have the intention that I want to recite the Nawafil, but I have qaza on me and therefore I'm praying the qaza, I am sure God out of his love and mercy would give us the thawab of both, inshallah.
Inshallah. We have come to the end of the questions which have currently been asked or have been asked so far. Perhaps I can just ask each of you to close with just a minute or so of final points, things you want people to remember, perhaps things we should keep at the forefront of our mind as we enter this month in just a few days' time. Sheikh, perhaps if you could just end us off just very briefly, what should we be keeping right at the forefront of our mind as we enter the next few days?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think, as Dr. Masuma alluded to, that there are blessings in this that we really want to be able to unearth. And if we are trying to understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give us the month of Ramadan whilst in these circumstances, because it is not haphazard, because none of it is pointless, but all of it is for our benefit and growth, all of us as individuals and as a collective unit will then be pursuing what it means to undergo Shahr Ramadan whilst socially distanced from our centers of worship, socially distanced from our family and friends. So I would want to be able to take a step back and really think about why I am in the circumstances in which I am in. And if I'm able to think about what it is that's going to challenge me in terms of my fasting in the circumstances I am in, I'll be better positioned to be able to come out of the month of Ramadan having excelled through these circumstances and the challenges that are in front of me personally and in terms of my family or unit, my circumstances as a community. Inshallah, a person can think through those and that will help him.
Thank you. We've also had a direct response to the question that you put out to the earlier question. So perhaps if you could just deal with that as well. The response says, answering that specific question, I would like to listen to lectures online, Qur'an recitations and daily du'as during the last hour till Maghrib Salah.
Wonderful. I would say, think about what lectures you want to listen to. Don't just randomly listen. Think about what you want to achieve in this month so that the lecture series or the lecture titles and content reflect the goals that you have of this month. When you're reciting the du'as before or in that hour before you breaking your fast, don't just listen to them in terms of just physically being present. Really try to engross yourself in the language that's being mentioned. And when you find a line of that dua that hits you, that makes you go, whoa, that's beautiful, or wow, I'd never thought of it that way, or wow, I can't believe I've never seen that before, take that line away, and at some point between Maghrib, when you're finishing your day's fast, and the 24 hours later, when you're next listening to that dua, 23 hours later, try to find some time to think about that one line of dua that hit you, that made you really become awakened to whatever line was that you listened to in that dua.
Thank you. Dr. Masuma, perhaps some final words, and in doing so, perhaps you could answer the final question, or I say the final question, the question that's come up very recently, although if anyone does have any other questions, we do have a couple of minutes left, so we may be able to squeeze one in if there is one. But as I say, in concluding, perhaps if you could just deal with this point, which is if shaitan is locked up in Ramadan, why do we sin?
So it fits in really, really well with my final comments that I wanted to make, which is that this is the month for self-reflection. The fact that we have Laylatul Qadr in this month, the most blessed night where our year is destined, where we have a say in the destiny of our year, we need to reflect on what it is that I want. Where am I on my journey towards Allah? where should I be? What's stopping me from getting from where I am to where I should be? And so there should be a lot of reflection happening, trying to think about, what's right in my life, what's wrong in my life, what do I need to change, what wajibat am I doing, what wajibat am I not doing that I should be doing, how can I better my wajibat, what muharramat am I doing which I need to step away from, what things am I justifying, and all of these questions have to be asked in a way that I'm actually looking for answers, and the best way to actually do it is when you're sitting there with a paper and a pen, have a pad, which is your self-reflective diary, where you're writing things down. Whatever comes to your mind as you're, keeping these questions in your mind, just write down the answers. And that way, then, when you look back at it, you remember what you were thinking, and you remember sort of the goals that you wanted to attain and where you wanted to go. And one of the things that we need to reflect on, which is what this person has asked, is if shaitan is locked up in Mahe Ramadhan, then why do we sin? Because as human beings, we love to blame others for our sins. It's shaitan's fault. It's my husband's fault. It's my children's fault. It's the society's fault that I live in. It's COVID's fault that I'm in this situation. Everything is someone else's fault but mine. But I need to realize that I am in control of my actions. I am in control of my emotions. I am in control of my thoughts. I choose to give control to others. I choose to not control them. And that's when then others influence me. But that was my choice. Now, a lot of the times I will listen to the waswas of shaitan. Shaitan doesn't make me sin. He just puts ideas into my mind. And then I run with those ideas. What Allah says is, okay, now I'm even taking that away. So he's not even putting the ideas in my mind. So if I am continuously sinning, then I need to reflect on how this sin has become habitual. It's something that I do which has become part of me. And therefore, that's quite scary. I need to think about how I can move away from that sin, because that's who I've become. That's not shaitan. That's no one else but me who's doing this. And the self-reflection should be, wow, this is who I am. And when that realization happens, that's the first step towards change. It's like, again, I'm told, I've never been to, but you're told that if you go to Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is to admit that you're an alcoholic. So again, the first step in admitting that this is the flaw that I have in me. This is who I've become. Once I admit it to myself, then I can do something about it, inshallah.
Thank you. It reminds me of an anecdote that someone sent me very recently that described shaitan as being a bit like a spoon that you stir your coffee with. You will continue stirring, and even after you take the spoon out, the coffee will still be swirling around in the cup. There is no spoon stirring that coffee, and yet it is still moving. And that is sometimes an analogy that we might be able to use to describe how, even though shaitan is no longer around, it may still impact, or our behavior may still not be significantly different. So perhaps we can pray, inshallah, that this Ramadan we can try and identify, as you said, what those issues are, and then, as Sheikh has said, put together this action plan to try and deal with and, inshallah, remedy those particular flaws that we identify. Thank you so much, Sheikh Jafar Ladek and Dr. Masuma Jafar, for joining us this evening, for sharing your wisdom with us. I hope that as a result of this seminar you feel somewhat more prepared for Mahe Ramadhan this year, perhaps in a better place spiritually. I think there's a lot of homework for all of us to do. I know that I need to go and find a notebook and start making some notes about what goals I want to achieve, and inshallah, if we all do that and try and keep to those and challenge ourselves when we don't necessarily meet them the way that we expect, we can try and maximize this time that we have in lockdown to benefit as much as possible from Allah's banquet. Thank you to all of you who have joined us this evening, and although this is the end of this series of seminars, there is a huge amount going on at Hujjat every single day. I'm sure you will all have seen the schedules that have been published. In fact, today we've also had the schedules published for Mahe Ramadhan. There are a large number of different programs, something I hope that will suit every single one of us to benefit from over the upcoming month, even over the next few days. In a moment we may see the schedule on screen if we're lucky, but there is a lot going on even on a daily basis. So let's take advantage of the fact that although the mosque itself is not open, there is still a lot that we can benefit from during these next few weeks. Inshallah, we will all then at some point in the future be able to see each other physically at the mosque. Thank you very much, and inshallah we will see you again soon. Wassalamu alaikum.